Close your eyes for a moment and let the world around you soften. Imagine yourself in a quiet stone chamber, the flicker of torchlight casting long shadows on the walls. The air is cool, heavy with the scent of damp stone and faint traces of wood smoke. You're here to journey back to a time when life was shaped by the rhythm of survival, faith, and fear. Tonight, we'll walk through the medieval world, not the grand halls of kings, but the darker corners where the tools of justice and punishment whispered tales of human struggle. This is a story of endurance, of lives bound by hardship, and of the shadowy places where power was enforced. Let's begin gently as we step into the daily life of those who lived under the shadow of the medieval torture chamber. Our journey unfolds in 4 parts. First, we'll immerse ourselves in the daily life of the medieval world, where survival was a constant dance with scarcity and fear. Then, we'll explore the life of a figure who wielded the tools of punishment, a man shaped by his grim task. Next, we'll uncover the mysteries and truths behind the myths of medieval torture, sifting through the shadows of history. Finally, we'll contrast the lives of the elite with those who toiled beneath them, revealing the stark divides that defined this era. Settle in, let your mind wander, and let the rhythm of the past carry you. Picture a small village in 14th century England, nestled in a valley where mist clings to the fields at dawn. The air is sharp with the scent of dew-soaked grass and the faint tang of livestock. The sun has barely risen, yet the village stirs. Hear the creak of wooden carts, the low cluck of hens, and the rhythmic thud of a blacksmith's hammer in the distance. This is the world of the common folk, where every day is a delicate balance of labor and hope, shadowed by the ever-present threat of punishment for those who stray. Life here revolves around the seasons and the church. The villagers rise with the light, their breath visible in the chilly morning air. Most are peasants, bound to the land they work for, a lord they rarely see. Their homes are simple wattle and dom huts with thatched roofs, the walls patched with mud to keep out the wind. Inside, the air is thick with the smell of smoke from a central hearth, where a small fire smolders to warm the family. The floor is packed earth, strewn with straw to soak up spills. You might imagine yourself sitting at a rough wooden table, a loaf of coarse barley bread before you, perhaps shared with a thin broth of cabbage and herbs. Meals are sparse, especially in lean years when the harvest falters. Day's work begins early. Men and women trudge to the fields, their hands calloused from wielding heavy tools plows, pulled by oxen, sickles for cutting grain. The soil is stubborn, often heavy with clay, and the labor is back-breaking. You can almost feel the weight of the plow, the strain in your shoulders as you guide it through the earth. Children, too, have their tasks gathering firewood, tending geese, or scaring birds from the crops. The rhythm of their lives is relentless, tied to the land and the Lord's demands. Taxes and tithes claim much of what they grow, leaving just enough to survive until the next harvest. But life isn't just labor, it's also fear. The medieval world is governed by strict codes, enforced by the church and the Lord's law. Step out of line, and the consequences could be severe. Imagine yourself in the village square, where a wooden pillory stands as a constant reminder. Thief might be locked there, his wrists and neck trapped in the splintered wood, exposed to the jeers of neighbors and the sting of thrown refuse. The pillory is a public humiliation, meant to deter others. But it's mild compared to what awaits in the Lord's dungeon or the church escorts. Crime in this world is more than theft or violence, it's defiance of order. A peasant who poaches a rabbit from the Lord's forest risks losing a hand. A woman accused of gossiping against the church might face a scold's bridle, a metal cage fitted over her head to silence her tongue. These punishments are not hidden. They're performed in the open, where all can see. The village buzzes with whispers of who was punished and why, each story a thread in the fabric of fear that binds the community. This brings us to the torture chamber, a place few see but all fear. It's not a daily sight, tucked away in the Lord's castle or a bishop's stronghold, but its presence looms large. The mere threat of it shapes behavior. Imagine hearing tales of it as you sit by the fire at night. The storyteller's voice, low and steady. They speak of iron chains, of rooms where the air is thick with dread, of tools designed to extract truth or punish sin. The chamber isn't just a place, it's a symbol of authority, a reminder that disobedience carries a heavy price. For the common folk, the torture chamber is a distant but real terror. Most will never see it, but they know its purpose. Accusations of heresy, treason, or witchcraft could lead there, and the journey begins with the bailiff's heavy knock. Imagine the dread in a villager's heart as they re-summoned to the Lord's court, unsure if they'll return. The chamber is reserved for serious crimes, but its shadow falls over even minor infractions. A peasant might avoid the Lord's gaze, fearing a misinterpreted glance could lead to suspicion. Life, then, is a constant negotiation with authority and survival. The villagers work, pray, and obey, hoping to avoid the attention of those who wield power. The church's bells toll at regular intervals, calling them to prayer, a reminder of divine judgment as much as earthly law. Sundays offer a brief respite, but even then, the priest's sermons warn of sin and its consequences. The rhythm of their lives is one of endurance, each day a step through a world where survival demands caution. As the sun sets, the village grows quiet. Families gather in their huts, the glow of the hearth casting flickering shadows. You might imagine yourself there, wrapped in a coarse woolen blanket, the day's labors heavy in your bones. The air smells of smoke and damp earth, and outside, the wind rustles through the thatch. Sleep comes slowly, but it's a welcome escape from the weight of the day. Yet, even in sleep, the fear lingers, a whisper of what might happen if the bailiff comes calling. This life, so different from our own, sets the stage for the tools and hands that shaped it. Let's step closer now, into the world of one who wielded those tools, a man whose life was bound to the shadow of the torture chamber. As the village settles into the stillness of night, imagine yourself stepping beyond its borders, toward the stone walls of a castle perched on a hill. The air grows colder, the scent of damp moss clinging to the stones. Torchlight flickers through narrow windows, casting an uneven glow. Here, in the heart of power, lives a man whose name is whispered with unease. Thomas, the questioner, a man tasked with extracting truth in the Lord's dungeon. His life, like the village's, is shaped by the rhythm of his world, but his role sets him apart, binding him to the grim machinery of justice. Let's walk through his days, not to dwell on the tools of his trade, but to understand the man behind them and the weight he carries. Thomas was not born to this work. Picture him as a young man in a market town, perhaps 30 years ago, his hands more accustomed to a quill than a chain. He was a scribe's apprentice once, scratching records for a local monastery. His days filled with the scent of parchment and ink. But the world of the 14th century is unforgiving, and ambition or necessity leads men down unexpected paths. When the Lord's bailiff sought a man literate enough to record confessions, yet loyal enough to serve without question, Thomas was chosen. His quiet demeanor, his steady hand, made him a fit for the task, though it was not one he sought. Now, imagine Thomas rising at dawn in a small chamber within the castle's walls. His room is sparse, a narrow bed of straw, a wooden stool, a single window letting in the pale morning light. The air smells faintly of tallow from a candle burned late into the night. He dresses in simple woolen robes, practical but worn, and breaks his fast with bread and ale, the same fare as the villagers he once lived among. Yet his life is different now, marked by the role he plays. The castle's servants avoid his gaze, their whispers trailing him as he walks the stone corridors to the Lord's hall. Thomas's work begins when the Lord or the church demands answers. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of the great hall, where tapestries hang heavy with dust and the air carries the faint sweetness of beeswax candles. The Lord, seated in a carved chair, issues orders. A poacher caught in the forest heretic accused by a zealous priest, a thief whose crimes threaten the order of the manor. Thomas listens, his face impassive, noting the names and charges in a ledger. His role is not to judge, but to uncover truth, to ensure the Lord's justice is served. The dungeon lies below, reached by a spiral stair that seems to swallow light. The air grows heavy, thick with the scent of damp stone and rust. Here, in a low-ceilinged chamber, are the tools of Thomas's trade, on the focus of our tale, but a presence that shapes his days. Chains hang from the walls, their clink a constant undertone. A wooden rack stands in one corner, its purpose unspoken but understood. Thomas moves with precision, his voice calm as he questions those brought before him. He speaks softly, almost kindly, urging confession to spare further ordeal. His words are measured, his tone detached, as if he's merely a scribe recording the will of others. Yet the work takes its toll. Imagine Thomas at night, alone in his chamber, the flicker of candlelight casting shadows on his face. He writes in his ledger, not just confessions, but his own thoughts, though he shares them with no one. The weight of his role presses on him the knowledge that his questions, however gently posed, lead to suffering. He knows the accused are often guilty, but not always. The poacher may have stolen to feed a starving family. The heretic may have spoken out of desperation or doubt. Thomas carries these truths silently, his loyalty to the Lord binding him to his task. To understand Thomas, we must see the world that shaped him. The 14th century is a time of rigid hierarchies, where power flows from the king to the lords to the church. Justice is not a matter of fairness, but of order. The torture chamber, though rarely used compared to public punishments like the pillory, is a tool of control, its existence a deterrent. Thomas is not a sadist, nor is he a villain in the tales whispered by villagers. He is a functionary, a man caught in the machinery of his time. His literacy, once a path to a quiet life, now ties him to a role he cannot escape. The church, too, plays its part. The Inquisition, gaining strength in parts of Europe, demands truth in matters of faith. Heresy is a crime against God and man, and Thomas's work sometimes serves the priests who seek to root it out. He navigates their demands with care, aware that a misstep could turn suspicion on him. Imagine him in a candlelit meeting with a visiting inquisitor, the air tense with unspoken threats. Thomas listens, nods, and returns to his ledger, his quill scratching out the words that will shape another's fate. Thomas's life is not without moments of reprieve. On rare days, he walks the castle grounds, the scent of wildflowers cutting through the stone's dampness. He visits the chapel, not for prayer, but for silence, the cool air soothing his mind. Yet even here, he is apart. The other servants see him as the Lord's shadow, a man who carries out what others dare not. Friendships are few, and trust is scarce. His world is one of solitude, bound by duty and the knowledge of what his hands have wrought. As the years pass, Thomas grows older, his hair graying, his hands trembling slightly as he writes. He wonders, in quiet moments, what his life might have been had he remained a scribe. But such thoughts are fleeting. The rhythm of his life is set questions, confessions, and the clink of chains. He serves because he must, because the world demands it. His story is not one of cruelty, but of necessity, a man shaped by the unforgiving structure of his time. Music shifts to a deeper, slower melody, like the toll of a distant bell. Thomas's life, solitary and burdened, leads us to the wider truths of his world. Its torture chamber, a place of fear and myth, holds secrets beyond its walls. Let's turn now to the mysteries and realities of medieval justice to uncover what truly happened in those shadowed rooms. Imagine yourself standing at the threshold of a forgotten chamber, the air cool and heavy with the scent of ancient stone. The torchlight flickers, casting shadows that dance across walls scarred by time. This is no ordinary room. It's a relic of the medieval world, a place where justice was meted out, where truth was sought in the clink of iron and the murmur of confessions. The torture chamber, shrouded in myth, holds secrets that history and archaeology are only beginning to unravel. Let's step carefully into this world, not to dwell on its grim tools, but to explore the culture, beliefs, and realities that shaped it, sifting through the shadows to find the truth. The medieval torture chamber looms large in our imagination, conjured by tales of iron maidens and racks that stretched bodies to breaking. But how much of this is true? Picture yourself as an archaeologist, brushing away centuries of dust from a castle's undercroft. The chambers you uncover are often small, their walls rough-hewn, with iron rings embedded for chains. The air smells of damp earth, and the floor is worn smooth by countless footsteps. These rooms, found in castles across Europe, tell a story less sensational than the myths, but no less compelling. Contrary to popular belief, torture was not a daily practice. Its use was rare, reserved for cases of high treason, heresy, or crimes that threatened the social order. Allah saw it as a last resort, a tool to extract confessions when other methods failed. Imagine a scribe like Thomas, a questioner from before, recording the proceedings in a ledger, his quill scratching as a priest or bailiff oversees the process. The goal was not punishment, but truth, at least, a truth that served the powerful. Confessions, once obtained, could restore order, affirm faith, or justify a lord's rule. Archaeological finds support this restrained reality. Excavations at sites like the Tower of London or castles in Bavaria reveal few dedicated torture chambers. Instead, dungeons were multi-purpose, holding prisoners, storing supplies, or serving as armories. The tools found, such as manacles or wooden stocks, suggest restraint more than elaborate cruelty. The infamous Iron Maiden, often tied to the medieval era, is largely a 19th century invention, a product of sensationalized histories. The truth, uncovered in stone and iron, is subtler but no less heavy. To understand the torture chamber, we must look to the culture that birthed it. Imagine yourself in a medieval courtroom, a low hall where a lord or bishop presides. The air is thick with the scent of wax from candles and the murmurs of onlookers. Justice in this world is not about fairness, but about maintaining divine and earthly order. The church taught that sin disrupted God's plan, and secular lords saw rebellion as a threat to their authority. Punishment, whether public or hidden, was a ritual to restore balance. Torture, when used, was governed by strict rules. The church's inquisitors, for instance, followed manuals like the Malleus Maleficarum or earlier texts, which outlined permissible methods. These were not acts of sadism, but calculated steps, overseen by men who believed they served a higher purpose. Picture a priest, his robes heavy with incense, questioning an accused heretic. His voice is calm, his words precise, urging repentance to save the soul and the community. The tools, ropes, weights, or water were means to an end, their use justified by the need for truth. Yet this culture was not monolithic. Different regions, even different lords, approached justice uniquely. In England, secular courts favored fines or public punishments, like the pillory for common crimes, serving torture for rare cases of treason. In contrast, the Inquisition in Spain or Italy leaned heavily on interrogation, driven by fears of heresy. Imagine walking through a bustling market in Toledo, overhearing whispers of an inquisitor's arrival. The air grows tense, the scent of spices mingling with unease. The torture chamber, though hidden, shapes the rhythm of life, its threat a constant undertone. Archaeology offers a window into this world. Excavations at sites like Carcassonne in France revealed cells with scratched graffiti names, prayers, or simple marks left by those who waited in the dark. These traces humanize the past, reminding us that the chamber was not just a place of fear, but of human experience. Imagine running your fingers over those scratches, feeling the desperation etched into the stone. Some cells held not criminals, but political prisoners, their fates tied to shifting alliances. Others held the accused, awaiting trial by ordeal or questioning. The tools themselves, when found, are starkly practical. Tearing, shackles, worn smooth by use, tell of confinement more than torment. Wooden devices, like the rack or press, were simple in design, built for function, not spectacle. The air in these chambers, as archaeologists note, was often damp and cold, the walls echoing with the sounds of chains or distant voices. Yet, these spaces were not the blood-soaked nightmares of legend. The reality was one of control, not chaos, a system designed to intimidate as much as to punish. This culture of justice touched every life, from peasant to noble. Imagine yourself back in the village, sitting by a fire as a storyteller recounts a trial. The tale is not of gore, but of consequence of families left destitute when a breadwinner was punished, of communities shaken by accusations. The torture chamber, though rarely seen, was a shared fear, its existence shaping behavior. A farmer might avoid the Lord's forest, fearing the chain. A woman might guard her words, dreading the label of witch. Yet, there was resilience, too. The same culture that birthed the chamber fostered art, faith, and community. Manuscripts from the era, illuminated with vibrant inks, speak of hope and divine order. Churches, their stone walls, warmed by candlelight, offered solace amid fear. The rhythm of life continued, even under the shadow of punishment. People worked, loved, and dreamed, their lives a tapestry of hardship and beauty. Music shifts to a soft, reflective melody, like the hum of a distant choir. The truths we've uncovered, myths dispelled, stones unearthed lead us to the final thread of our journey. The medieval world was not just one of peasants and questioners, but of stark divides, where the elite lived lives unimaginable to those below. Let's turn now to the lords, the clergy, and the contrasts that defined their world. Imagine yourself stepping out of the damp, shadowed dungeon and into the warmth of a great hall. The air shifts, carrying the scent of polished wood, roasted meat, and the faint sweetness of spiced wine. Tapestries line the walls, their colors vivid in the glow of countless candles. This is the world of the elite lords, ladies, and clergy whose lives stand in stark contrast to the villagers toiling in the fields below. Yet even here, the shadow of the torture chamber lingers, a tool of their power, its presence felt in the order they enforce. Let's walk through their world, exploring the luxuries, duties, and contradictions that defined it, and how they shaped the lives of those beneath them. Picture a lord's castle, its stone walls rising high above the village. Inside, the great hall buzzes with activity. Servants move silently, their footsteps muffled on rushes strewn across the floor. The lord, seated at a long oak table, dines on venison and soft white bread, a far cry from the coarse barley loaves of the peasants. The air is rich with the aroma of herbs rosemary, to command the clink of silver goblets. His robes are fine wool, dyed deep blue, a color reserved for wealth. His wife, the lady, sits beside him, her gown embroidered with threads that catch the light. Their world is one of privilege, but it is not without its burdens. The Lord's days are filled with the business of power. Imagine him in a high-backed chair, receiving petitioners, merchants seeking trade rights, knights pledging loyalty, or priests requesting funds for the church. His voice is steady, his decisions final. The torture chamber, though hidden below, is part of his authority. He rarely visits it, leaving such matters to men like Thomas the Questioner, but he knows its purpose. A rebellious vassal, a thief caught on his lands, or a heretic threatening the church's order all might find themselves in that shadowed room. Their fate a reminder of his rule. The Lord does not relish this. It is simply the rhythm of his world, a necessity to maintain the order that keeps his lands secure. The clergy, too, live apart from the common folk. Picture a bishop in his private chambers, the air heavy with the scent of incense and parchment. His robes are silk, his fingers adorned with rings that gleam in the candlelight. He spends his days studying scripture, overseeing church lands, or meeting with inquisitors to root out heresy. The torture chamber, for him, is a tool of divine justice, used sparingly but deliberately. He might pray for the souls of those questioned, his voice soft but unwavering, believing their suffering serves a higher purpose. Yet his life is one of comfort, his meals abundant, his bed warmed by furs. A stark contrast to the villagers' straw pallets. Let's return to the village, where the peasants' lives unfold in the shadow of this grandeur. Imagine yourself walking through the muddy lanes at dusk, the air thick with the smell of wood smoke and livestock. A family huddles in their hut, their faces lit by the flicker of a single rushlight. Their meal is a thin pottage of oats and leeks, shared from a single pot. The children sleep close to the hearth, their breath visible in the chill. Their days are bound to the land, their labor fueling the Lord's wealth. Taxes claim their grain, tithes their livestock, leaving just enough to survive. The threat of punishment, whether the pillory or the distant terror of the dungeon, keeps them obedient. The contrast is stark. While the Lord dines on spiced wine and game, the peasant dreams of a full stomach. While the lady's hands are soft, adorned with jewels, the peasant women's are rough from weaving or churning butter. The elite live in stone walls, warmed by fires. The villagers in fragile huts, patched against the wind. Yet, both worlds are connected by the same system. The Lord's power rests on the peasant's labor, and the peasant's survival depends on the Lord's protection. The torture chamber, though rarely used, finds them all a tool of control that ensures the rhythm of this unequal world continues. This divide shapes the medieval social order. Imagine a festival day when the village and castle briefly converge. The Lord hosts a feast in the fields, a rare moment of generosity. Tables are laden with bread and ale, and the air hums with laughter and the strum of a lute. Peasants mingle cautiously, their eyes lowered in deference. The Lord and his retinue watch from a raised platform, their presence a reminder of their authority. Even here, the shadow of punishment lingers. A drunken brawl could lead to the stocks, a whispered insult to a summons. The festival, meant to unite, reinforces the divide. The church, too, bridges these worlds while deepening their separation. Picture a Sunday Mass, the village church packed with worshippers. The peasants stand at the back, their clothes patched, while the Lord and his family sit in carved pews near the altar. The priest's sermon speaks of obedience, of God's order reflected in the earthly hierarchy. The torture chamber, though unspoken, is part of this divine planner tool to correct those who stray. The peasants bow their heads, praying for mercy, while the elite pray for strength to uphold their duty. This contrast carries a human cost. For the elite, it is isolation. The Lord, surrounded by wealth, trusts few. His allies scheme, his enemies wait. The bishop, though revered, lives apart, his faith tested by the compromises of power. For the peasants, the cost is survival itself. A failed harvest means hunger. A false accusation means ruin. The torture chamber, though distant, is a constant threat, its existence a reminder of their place. Imagine a mother whispering to her child at night, urging caution, "Speak softly, lest the Lord's men hear." The rhythm of their lives is one of endurance, shaped by fear as much as labor. Yet there is resilience in both worlds. The Lord builds alliances, fortifies his castle, dreams of legacy. The peasant sows his fields, tells stories by the fire, finds joy in small moments, a child's laugh, a warm spring day. Both are bound by the same world, its rules enforced by the tools of justice, visible or hidden. The torture chamber, though a small part of their lives, casts a long shadow, a thread in the tapestry of their existence. This divided world, with its contrasts and shadows, brings us to the end of our journey. Let's step back now, reflecting on the lives we've explored, and ease toward a gentle close. As we leave the medieval world, imagine yourself lying in the quiet of your own space, the air warm and still, the scents of damp stone, wood smoke, and spiced wine fade, replaced by the comfort of the present. The lives we've walked through, those of villagers toiling in the fields, of Thomas the questioner bound by duty, of lords and clergy wielding power, belong to a time long past, yet their echoes linger. The torture chamber, a symbol of fear and control, was but one part of their world, a world of hardship and beauty, of struggle and resilience. Reflect for a moment on how different your life is. The rhythms of their day's labor, fear, obedience are distant now, replaced by the hum of modern life. The threats they faced, from hunger to the shadow of punishment, are softened by time. You rest in a world they could not imagine, where warmth and safety are closer at hand. Let the weight of their lives slip away, like a story told by firelight, and let your mind drift. The past has spoken, its lessons woven into the quiet of this moment. Sleep now, carried gently by the rhythm of history into the peace of your own time.